Jake Morrison walked through the metal halls of Nexus Prime Space Station. His boots made soft sounds on the floor as he moved from one section to another. The station was huge and floated in space between 3 different alien worlds. Many different kinds of aliens lived and worked here together. Jake was a human soldier from Earth. He had been working on this station for 6 months now. His job was to keep everyone safe and make sure no one broke the rules. The rules were very important here because so many different types of beings lived together. Some aliens looked like giant bugs, others looked like walking rocks, and some looked almost like humans but with different colored skin. Humans were still new to space. They had only joined the big group of alien worlds 10 years ago. Most aliens did not trust humans very much yet. They thought humans were too young and did not know enough about space politics. Jake did not mind this too much. He just wanted to do his job well. The station had many levels. Jake was walking on one of the lower levels where aliens bought and sold things. There were shops that sold strange foods, weird machines, and clothes for aliens with different body shapes. The air smelled like metal and cleaning chemicals. Bright lights hung from the ceiling and made everything look blue and white. As Jake walked past a waste processing area, he heard loud voices. A group of aliens had gathered in a circle. They were talking in different languages that sounded like clicks, whistles, and growls. Jake could not understand most of what they were saying, but he knew something was wrong. Jake pushed through the crowd of aliens. Some of them were tall and thin like walking sticks. Others were short and round like balls. They all moved away from Jake when he came closer. In the center of the circle, Jake saw something that made his stomach feel sick. An alien was lying on the metal floor. This alien looked like a giant bug with 6 legs and big compound eyes. Its body was covered in hard shell-like skin that was green and brown. Jake knew this was a Veltar, one of the smartest alien races in the galaxy. They were known for making amazing biological machines and medicine. But this Veltar was not moving. Its 6 legs were bent in ways that looked very wrong. Its hard shell was cracked along its back in a long line. The alien's big compound eyes were open and looking around, but Jake could see pain and fear in them. A small machine near the alien's head was making weak beeping sounds and speaking in broken galactic standard language. "Help me, please," the machine translated in a robot voice. "Cannot move. Need help. Please, someone help." Jake looked around at the crowd of aliens. They were all just standing there watching. Some of them looked sad, others looked curious, but none of them were trying to help the hurt Veltar. Jake did not understand why no one was doing anything. Jake pressed a button on the communication device on his belt. "This is Lieutenant Morrison," he said. "I need medical help on level 12 near waste processing. There is a badly injured Veltar here." The voice that came back through his device was cold and mechanical. "Request denied, Lieutenant Morrison. Station medical cannot help Veltar injuries. We do not have the right equipment for their biology. Galactic Law number 847 says we cannot give medical help to aliens unless we have special permission and training." Jake stared down at the hurt alien. The Veltar's eyes were looking right at him. Even though the alien looked very different from humans, Jake could see that it was asking for help. The small translation machine kept repeating the same words over and over. "Help me, please. Cannot move. Need help. Please, someone help." The crowd of aliens started to walk away. Jake watched as different types of beings just turned around and left. They acted like nothing was happening. A tall blue alien with 4 arms shook its head and walked away. A short furry alien made a sad sound but also left. Even other bug-like aliens who looked similar to the hurt Veltar just walked past without stopping. Jake stood alone next to the injured alien. He did not know what to do. The rules were very clear. Humans were not allowed to give medical help to other aliens without special training. If Jake broke this rule, he could lose his job and get in big trouble. Humans were already not trusted very much by other aliens. If he made a mistake, it could make things worse for all humans. But looking down at the hurt Veltar, Jake remembered his training back on Earth. Every human soldier learned one important rule above all others. Never leave someone behind when they need help. It did not matter if they were human or not. If someone was hurt and needed help, a good person should try to help them. The Veltar's compound eyes moved to look at Jake again. The alien could not move its body, but its eyes could still move. Jake saw intelligence in those eyes. This was not just an animal that was hurt. This was a thinking being who understood what was happening to it. The alien knew it was badly hurt, and that everyone was walking away. Jake knelt down next to the alien. The metal floor was cold against his knee. He did not know much about Veltar biology, but he could see that the crack in the alien's shell went along its spine. Jake had seen similar injuries in humans before. When the spine was damaged, people could not move their arms and legs anymore. "Hey, there," Jake said in a soft voice. "My name is Jake. I am going to try to help you somehow." The translation machine picked up Jake's words and turned them into clicks and whistles that the Veltar could understand. The alien's eyes seemed to brighten a little bit when it heard Jake's voice. Jake pressed his communication button again. "This is Morrison again. I need to know what the procedure is for getting proper medical help for this injured alien." The voice came back quickly. "The proper procedure is to contact Veltar Space Command and request a medical ship. Current wait. Time for Veltar medical response is approximately 4 to 6 months, due to trade disputes in that sector." Jake felt anger growing in his chest. 4 to 6 months. The alien would be dead long before then. He looked around the empty hallway where the crowd had been just minutes ago. Everyone had just walked away and left this feeling being to suffer alone on the cold metal floor. 3 days had passed since Jake first found the injured Veltar on the station floor. The alien had been moved to a small holding room in the lower levels of the station. Jake had learned that the alien's name was Zektar, and that he had been working as an engineer before his accident. Jake visited Zektar every day after his work shift ended. The holding room was not a good place for someone who was hurt. It had white walls, bright lights, and a simple bed that kept Zektar alive but did not make him comfortable. There were no windows and the air smelled like disinfectant chemicals. Zektar lay on a flat platform that had tubes and wires connected to his body. These machines kept him fed and helped him breathe, but they could not fix his broken spine. His 6 legs hung over the sides of the platform like dead branches. Only his head and eyes could move now. "Why does nobody help me?" Zektar asked through his translation device when Jake came to visit. "In all the galaxy, why does nobody care what happens to me?" Jake sat in a chair next to the platform. He had been thinking about this question for days. The answer was complicated and made Jake feel angry about how the galaxy worked. "There are laws," Jake explained. "Every alien species has different biology. The galactic government made rules that say only doctors from your own species can give you medical treatment. They say it is to keep everyone safe." Zektar's compound eyes moved to look at Jake. "But my people cannot come for months. I will be dead before they arrive. These laws will kill me." Jake nodded. He had read about the trade disputes that were keeping Veltar ships away from this part of space. Political problems between different alien governments meant that Zektar's people could not send help quickly. "The laws are supposed to protect everyone," Jake said, "but sometimes they hurt people instead of helping them." "Your species is different," Zektar said. "You come here every day to talk to me. The others pretend I do not exist." Jake had noticed this too. Other aliens who worked on the station would walk past Zektar's room without stopping. Even other Veltar who lived on the station did not visit. Everyone acted like Zektar was already dead. It was as if being hurt and helpless made him invisible to his own people. During his visits, Jake learned more about Zektar's life. The Veltar had been working on a project to build faster communication systems between star systems. He had been testing a new gravity lift when it malfunctioned and crushed his spine. Zektar had been one of the smartest engineers among his people. "I had a mate," Zektar told Jake during one visit. "We were planning to have offspring soon. She was told that I am now useless because I cannot work or move. She has chosen a new mate. This is normal for my people. We do not waste resources on broken individuals." Jake felt sick when he heard this. On Earth, when someone got hurt, their family and friends would help them and take care of them. The idea of abandoning someone just because they were injured seemed wrong and cruel to Jake. Other humans on the station told Jake he was wasting his time. Captain Linda Hayes was Jake's boss, and she did not like him visiting Zektar so often. "Morrison," she said one day, You need to stop going down to see that alien. We are new here and we cannot afford to make the other species angry with us. If you get too involved in this situation, it could cause problems for all humans." Jake understood what Captain Hayes was saying. Humans had only recently been allowed to join the galactic community. Many aliens still did not trust them. If Jake broke the rules and something went wrong, other aliens might decide that humans were dangerous and should not be allowed in space anymore. But Jake could not stop thinking about Zektar lying alone in that small room. Every night when Jake went to sleep in his quarters, he thought about the injured alien, staring at the white walls with no one to talk to. Jake had been trained as a soldier to never leave anyone behind, and this felt exactly like leaving someone behind. Jake started spending his free time in the station's computer library learning about Veltar biology. The aliens had a very complex body system, but their basic structure was similar to insects from Earth, just much larger and more advanced. Their nervous system was different from humans, but it still worked by sending electrical signals from the brain to the rest of the body. The injury that Zektar had suffered was similar to spinal cord injuries that humans sometimes got in accidents. When the spine was badly damaged, signals from the brain could not reach the arms and legs anymore. On Earth, doctors had developed some treatments for this type of injury, but they had never been tested on alien biology. Jake also learned that there were other humans on the station who might be able to help. Dr. Amy Carter was a scientist who studied alien biology. She had come to the station to learn about how different species lived and worked. Jake decided to talk to her about Zektar's condition. Dr. Carter was working in a laboratory when Jake found her. She was a young woman with short brown hair and wore a white coat covered in stains from chemical experiments. When Jake explained about Zektar, she listened carefully. "I have heard about this case," Dr. Carter said. "The medical staff talks about it sometimes. They say there is nothing anyone can do except wait for Veltar doctors to arrive." "But what if there was something we could do?" Jake asked. "What if human medicine could help him?" Dr. Carter was quiet for a long time. She walked around her laboratory looking at different machines and equipment. Finally, she turned back to Jake. "There might be something," she said, "but it would be very dangerous and probably illegal." Jake felt his heart beat faster. "Tell me about it." "On Earth, we have developed treatments for spinal cord injuries using tiny machines called nanobots," Dr. Carter explained. "These machines can create bridges across damaged nerve tissue and allow signals to pass through again. But this has never been tested on Veltar biology. We do not know if it would work or if it would kill him." "What about the legal problems?" Jake asked. Dr. Carter sighed. "We would be breaking dozens of galactic laws. If we were caught, we could be thrown off the station and banned from space forever. Both of our careers would be over. And if something went wrong during the procedure, we could be charged with murder." Jake thought about all the risks. His career, his future, maybe even his life could be destroyed if this plan failed. But then he thought about Zektar lying alone in that room, slowly dying while everyone ignored him. He thought about the translation device repeating, "Help me please," over and over while crowds of aliens walked away. "If we do nothing, he dies," Jake said. "If we try to help and fail, he still dies. But if we try to help and succeed, he lives. Those seem like good odds to me." Jake and Dr. Carter spent the next week planning how they could help Zektar. They met in secret places around the station where other people could not hear them talking. The plan was dangerous and complicated, but it might be Zektar's only chance to live. Dr. Carter had been studying the medical equipment that humans use to treat spinal injuries. The treatment used tiny robots called nanobots that were so small they could not be seen without special microscopes. These nanobots could build bridges across damaged nerve tissue and allow the brain to send signals to the rest of the body again. The problem was that this treatment had only been tested on humans and a few animals from Earth. No one knew if it would work on Veltar biology. The nanobots had to be programmed to recognize specific types of nerve cells and chemicals. If they were programmed wrong, they could attack healthy tissue instead of helping it. "We need samples of Veltar nerve tissue to test the nanobots on," Dr. Carter explained to Jake. Without testing, we would be guessing about how to program them. This created another problem. Getting samples of Veltar tissue would require cutting into Zektar's body, which would hurt him and might make his injury worse. It was also illegal to take biological samples from aliens without permission from their government. Jake decided to talk to Zektar about the plan. He went to the holding room, where Zektar spent his days staring at the white walls. The injured alien's eyes moved to look at Jake when he entered the room. "I have been thinking about your condition," Jake said. "There might be a way to help you, but it is very risky." Jake explained about the nanobots and how they work to repair damaged nerves in humans. He told Zektar about all the dangers and risks. The treatment might not work on Veltar biology. It might kill him. And if they were caught doing the procedure, Jake and Dr. Carter would get in serious trouble. "You would risk your career and your freedom to help me?" Zektar asked through his translation device. "Why would you do this for an alien you barely know?" Jake thought about this question. He had been asking himself the same thing for days. "On Earth we have a saying," Jake replied. "We leave no one behind." It means that when someone needs help, we help them, even if it is dangerous for us. It does not matter if they are human or alien. If someone is suffering and we can do something about it, then we should try. Zektar was quiet for a long time. His compound eyes looked up at the ceiling, then back at Jake. "In my culture, we believe that life has value only if it serves a purpose," he said. "A broken individual like me has no value because I cannot work or reproduce. But you see value in me even when my own people do not." "Every thinking being has value," Jake said. "You are not broken. You are injured. There is a difference." Zektar agreed to let them try the procedure. He also agreed to let Dr. Carter take small samples of his tissue to test the nanobots on. "If I am going to die anyway," he said, "then I would rather die trying to live than die doing nothing." Dr. Carter collected the tissue samples during one of her regular medical visits to check on Zektar. She pretended to be doing routine tests while actually taking tiny pieces of nerve tissue from near his injury. Zektar did not make any sounds of pain, even though Jake could see in his eyes that the sampling hurt. Back in her laboratory, Dr. Carter worked day and night to modify the nanobots for Veltar biology. She had to reprogram their recognition systems to identify Veltar nerve cells instead of human ones. She also had to adjust their chemical composition to work with Veltar body chemistry. The testing process took several days. Dr. Carter would put the nanobots on samples of Zektar's tissue and watch what happened under her microscope. The first attempts failed completely. The nanobots either ignored the Veltar tissue or attacked it like it was a foreign invader. "This is much harder than I thought it would be," Dr. Carter told Jake after another failed test. "Veltar nerve cells are very different from human nerve cells. The nanobots keep treating them like enemies instead of tissue to repair." Jake felt frustrated and worried. Every day that passed was another day that Zektar suffered in that small room. The alien was getting weaker as his body slowly shut down. His compound eyes were losing their brightness and his voice through the translation device was getting quieter. Dr. Carter continued working on the nanobots. She tried different programming approaches and chemical modifications. Slowly, she began to make progress. After 6 days of testing, she achieved a breakthrough. "Look at this," she said excitedly, showing Jake images through her microscope. "The nanobots are finally recognizing Veltar nerve tissue correctly. They are building connections between the damaged nerve fibers." Jake looked through the microscope and saw tiny structures that looked like bridges spanning across gaps in the tissue. The nanobots had successfully created pathways for nerve signals to travel across the damaged areas. "Does this mean the treatment will work?" Jake asked. "It means it might work," Dr. Carter replied carefully. "The tissue samples show that the nanobots can repair Veltar nerve damage, but we do not know how Zektar's whole body will react to having millions of nanobots injected into his spine. There could be immune reactions or other complications that we cannot predict from these small tests." They now needed to find a place to perform the procedure without being discovered. The medical bay was too public and had too many security cameras. Dr. Carter's laboratory was better, but other scientists used it during the day and might interrupt them. Jake found an abandoned research lab on one of the lower levels of the Station. The room had been used for materials testing but had been closed down when the research project ended. It still had power and basic equipment, but no one ever went there anymore. Dr. Carter moved the equipment they would need to the abandoned lab piece by piece over several days. She took medical scanners, surgical tools, and the container of modified nanobots. She also brought monitoring equipment to watch Zektar's vital signs during the procedure. The night before they planned to do the surgery, Jake visited Zektar, one last time to make sure he still wanted to go through with it. The Veltar looked much weaker than he had a week ago. His breathing was slower and his eyes did not move as quickly as before. "Are you ready for this?" Jake asked. "I have been ready to die for many days," Zektar replied. "Tomorrow, I will either be ready to live again, or I will find peace. Either choice is better than lying here slowly fading away while the galaxy pretends I do not exist." Jake felt a mixture of fear and determination. In a few hours, they would either save Zektar's life or accidentally kill him while trying to help. But Jake knew that doing nothing was the same as killing him slowly. At least this way, Zektar would know that someone cared enough to try. "We will do our best," Jake promised. "Whatever happens tomorrow, you will not be alone." Zektar's compound eyes seemed to brighten slightly. "Thank you, Jake Morrison," he said. "You have already given me something my own people would not. You have given me hope." News of Zektar's recovery spread through the station within 2 days. It was impossible to hide the fact that a paralyzed Veltar was now walking around on his own 6 legs. People who had seen him lying helpless in the holding room were shocked to see him moving through the corridors like nothing had happened. Station security began an immediate investigation. Jake knew this would happen, but he had hoped they would have more time to prepare their defense. Captain Hayes called Jake into her office and her face showed both anger and disappointment. "Morrison, what did you do?" she asked. "The medical staff is saying that Zektar's condition was impossible to treat, but somehow he is completely healed. There are only 2 humans on this station with enough medical knowledge to attempt something like this, and one of them reports to you." Jake decided to tell the truth. "Dr. Carter and I performed an experimental procedure using human medical technology. We modified nanobots to work with Veltar biology and used them to repair his damaged spine." Captain Hayes sat down heavily in her chair. "Do you have any idea how many galactic laws you have broken?" she said. "Unauthorized medical procedures, experimenting on alien biology without permits using restricted technology outside approved protocols. The list goes on and on." "Zektar was going to die," Jake replied. "No one else was going to help him. We could not just let him suffer when we knew there might be a way to save him." "That was not your decision to make," Captain Hayes said. "We are guests in this galactic community. We cannot go around breaking their laws just because we think we know better." 3 days later, Jake and Dr. Carter were brought before a formal tribunal of Galactic Council representatives. The hearing was held in a large chamber with delegates from many different alien species. Jake recognized some of the aliens from around the station, but others were officials who had come specifically for this case. The prosecutor was a tall Veltar official with dark green shell coloring. Jake found it ironic that Zektar's own species was leading the case against the humans who had saved his life. The prosecutor argued that Jake and Dr. Carter had violated numerous galactic laws and could have caused a dangerous incident if their procedure had gone wrong. The defendants acted without authorization and without consideration for the broader consequences of their actions, the prosecutor stated. Their reckless behavior could have resulted in the death of a Veltar citizen and created a diplomatic crisis between our species. Jake listened to the charges against him and felt angry that the same people who had ignored Zektar's suffering were now complaining about the methods used to save him, but he also understood their point. The galaxy was a complicated place with many different species who did not always trust each other. The laws existed to prevent conflicts and misunderstandings. Dr. Carter spoke first in their defense. She explained the medical procedure they had used and provided evidence that it had been carefully planned and executed. She showed the tribunal the test results that proved the nanobots were safe for Veltar biology before they used them on Zektar. "We did not act recklessly," she testified. We spent days researching and testing to make sure our procedure would work. We only proceeded when we were confident that we could help without causing harm. Then it was Jake's turn to speak. He stood up in front of all the alien representatives and tried to explain why they had broken the law to help Zektar. "I am a soldier," Jake began. "I was trained to protect people and to never leave anyone behind when they need help. When I saw Zektar lying on the floor asking for help, and everyone just walked away, I could not ignore that. It did not matter to me that he was not human. He was a thinking being who was suffering and needed help." Jake looked around the chamber at all the different types of aliens. "I understand that you have laws to keep everyone safe," he continued, "but sometimes following the law exactly means letting people die when you could save them. I do not think that is what your laws were meant to do." Then something unexpected happened. Zektar himself entered the hearing chamber. He walked in on all 6 legs, moving smoothly and normally. Many of the alien representatives had never seen him before his injury, and were surprised to see him healthy and mobile. "I request permission to speak," Zektar announced through his translation device. The tribunal leader, a gray alien with 4 eyes, granted permission for Zektar to testify. Zektar walked to the center of the chamber where everyone could see him clearly. "Honored representatives," Zektar began, "I am the victim that these humans are accused of helping illegally. I want to tell you what really happened during my injury and recovery." Zektar described how he had lain on the station floor for hours while hundreds of aliens walked past him. He told them about the weeks he spent in the holding room slowly dying while waiting for medical help that might never come. He explained how Jake was the only person who visited him and treated him like he mattered. "These humans saw my suffering and chose to act with compassion," Zektar testified. "They asked for nothing in return except the chance to help someone in need. They risked their careers and their futures to save the life of an alien they barely knew." Zektar paused and looked directly at the Veltar prosecutor. "My own people abandoned me when I became injured," he said. "They declared me worthless because I could not work or reproduce. But these humans saw value in my life even when my own species did not." The chamber became very quiet as the alien representatives considered what they had heard. Jake could see that some of them looked uncomfortable. They were being forced to confront the fact that their system of laws and customs had failed to help someone who desperately needed it. The tribunal deliberated for several hours before reaching their decision. When they returned to the chamber, the gray alien leader announced their verdict. "Lieutenant Morrison and Dr. Carter are found guilty of violating galactic medical protocols and conducting unauthorized procedures on an alien citizen," the leader stated. However, the tribunal also acknowledges that their actions were motivated by humanitarian concerns and resulted in saving a life that would otherwise have been lost. Jake felt his heart sink. He had expected to be found guilty, but he had hoped the circumstances would matter. Therefore, the leader continued, "The defendants will receive formal reprimands in their service records, but they will also be awarded the Council's first cross-species humanitarian medal for their exceptional compassion and bravery." Jake looked around the chamber in surprise. Several alien representatives were standing and making sounds that seemed approving in their various languages. Even some of the Veltar delegates appeared to be supporting the decision. Furthermore, the tribunal leader announced, "This case has highlighted serious gaps in our current medical assistance protocols. The Council will immediately begin work on new emergency procedures that will allow for cross-species medical intervention when lives are at stake." After the hearing ended, Zektar approached Jake and Dr. Carter outside the chamber. "I do not know how to thank you," he said. "You have not only saved my life, but you may have changed how the entire galaxy treats medical emergencies." In the weeks that followed, Jake noticed that other aliens on the station began treating humans differently. Instead of seeing them as newcomers who did not understand galactic politics, many aliens began to respect humans for their willingness to help others regardless of the consequences. Zektar remained on the station and began working with human medical researchers to develop better treatments for spinal injuries across multiple species. The procedure that had saved his life became the foundation for helping many other injured aliens who had previously been considered untreatable. Jake returned to his regular duties, but his perspective on his job had changed. He realized that being a protector meant more than just enforcing rules and maintaining order. Sometimes it meant having the courage to break bad rules in order to uphold better principles. On quiet evenings, Jake would often find Zektar in the station's observation lounge looking out at the stars through the large windows. They had become close friends, bonded by the experience of choosing compassion over convenience. "You know," Zektar said during one of these conversations, "before my accident, I thought the galaxy was a cold and uncaring place where everyone only looked out for themselves. You humans showed me that warmth and kindness can exist between any beings who choose to care about each other." Jake smiled as he watched ships from dozens of different worlds dock with the station. "Maybe that is what humans can contribute to the galaxy," he replied. "Not just our technology or our military power, but our refusal to let someone suffer alone when we have the power to help them." The story of Jake Morrison and Zektar became famous throughout the galactic community. It was told in many languages on hundreds of worlds as an example of how compassion could bridge the gaps between different species. The tale became a symbol of a new era in galactic politics, where the barriers between species began to lower through individual acts of kindness, rather than through treaties or trade agreements. Years later, when other species faced similar medical crises, they would remember the human soldier who had refused to walk away from a paralyzed alien. The procedures developed from Zektar's treatment saved thousands of lives across the galaxy. The abandoned laboratory was dark and cold when Jake and Dr. Carter arrived at midnight. They had waited until the station's night cycle when most people were sleeping and security patrols were lighter. Jake had used his security codes to temporarily disable the cameras in the hallway leading to the lab. Dr. Carter had already moved Zektar to the laboratory earlier that evening, telling the medical staff that she needed to run some routine tests. Getting Zektar to the lab had been difficult because he could not move on his own, and weighed almost as much as 3 humans. Zektar lay on a makeshift surgical table that Dr. Carter had built from laboratory equipment. Monitoring devices were attached to his body and showed his heart rate, breathing, and other vital signs on glowing screens. The numbers were not good. His body was slowly shutting down from being paralyzed for so long. "How are you feeling?" Jake asked Zektar as they prepared for the surgery. "I am frightened," Zektar admitted through his translation device. "But I am also grateful. For the first time since my accident, I feel like someone sees me as more than just a problem to be ignored." Dr. Carter checked all her equipment one final time. She had containers of modified nanobots that had been programmed specifically for Veltar biology. She had surgical tools that could make precise cuts in Zektar's hard shell-like skin. She had backup life support systems in case something went wrong. "The procedure will take several hours," Dr. Carter explained to both Jake and Zektar. "I will need to make small openings in the shell around the damaged area of the spine. Then I will inject the nanobots directly into the nerve tissue. The nanobots should begin building bridges across the damaged areas immediately." Jake's job was to monitor Zektar's vital signs and watch for any signs of trouble. He also needed to keep watch for any security patrols or other people who might discover what they were doing. If they were caught, all 3 of them would be in serious trouble. Dr. Carter began by using a medical scanner to map the exact location of the damage in Zektar's spine. The scanner showed detailed images of the injured area on a computer screen. Jake could see where the nerve pathway had been completely severed by the gravity lift accident. "The damage is extensive," Dr. Carter said quietly, "but it looks like the nanobots should be able to bridge the gap if they work correctly." She used a special cutting tool to make several small holes in Zektar's shell near the injury site. The hard outer covering of his body was much thicker than human skin, and required careful work to cut through without causing more damage. Zektar remained conscious during this process, and his eyes watched Dr. Carter's every movement. "Does it hurt?" Jake asked. "Yes," Zektar replied, "but it is good pain. It is the pain of someone trying to help me instead of the pain of being forgotten." Dr. Carter inserted thin tubes through the holes she had made and began injecting the nanobots into Zektar's damaged nerve tissue. The nanobots were invisible to the naked eye, but the computer screens showed them as tiny moving dots spreading through the injury site. "The nanobots are dispersing correctly," Dr. Carter reported. "Now we wait to see if they begin forming connections." The waiting was the hardest part. Jake watched the monitors that showed Zektar's vital signs while Dr. Carter watched the scanners that tracked the nanobot's progress. For the first hour, nothing seemed to change. The nanobots moved through the damaged tissue but did not appear to be doing anything useful. Then Zektar's vital signs began to fluctuate. His heart rate increased and his breathing became irregular. Alarms started beeping on the monitoring equipment. "Something is wrong," Dr. Carter said with worry in her voice. His body might be having an immune reaction to the nanobots. Jake watched as the numbers on the screens jumped up and down. Zektar's compound eyes moved rapidly back and forth, showing that he was in distress. The translation device began making static sounds as Zektar tried to speak, but could not form words properly. "Should we stop the procedure?" Jake asked. "It might be too late to stop," Dr. Carter replied. "The nanobots are already in his system. All we can do now is try to keep him stable and hope his body adapts to them." For 2 hours, Zektar's condition remained critical. His vital signs continued to be unstable, and Dr. Carter had to give him several injections of medicine to keep his body functioning. Jake felt helpless as he watched his friend suffer through the treatment that was supposed to help him. "I am sorry," Jake said to Zektar during one of the moments when the alien seemed more alert. "This was my idea. If something happens to you, it is my fault." Zektar's translation device crackled with static before his words came through clearly. "Do not be sorry," he said weakly. "You tried to save me when no one else would. If I die tonight, I die knowing that someone cared about my life." Slowly, Zektar's vital signs began to stabilize. His heart rate returned to normal and his breathing became steady again. The immune reaction seemed to be subsiding as his body accepted the nanobots instead of fighting them. "Look at this," Dr. Carter said excitedly, pointing to the scanner screen. "The nanobots are working. They are building connections across the damaged nerve tissue." Jake looked at the scanner and saw new pathways forming where there had been empty gaps before. The tiny robots were creating bridges that would allow nerve signals to travel from Zektar's brain to the rest of his body. "How long before we know if it worked?" Jake asked. "The connections need time to strengthen," Dr. Carter explained. "It could be several hours before nerve signals can actually travel across the bridges that are being built." They continued to wait and monitor Zektar's condition. The alien remained conscious but weak from the stress of the surgery. His compound eyes stayed focused on Jake's face, as if drawing strength from having someone there who cared about what happened to him. After 4 more hours, something amazing began to happen. One of Zektar's middle legs twitched slightly. At first, Jake thought he had imagined it, but then it happened again. "Did you see that?" Jake asked Dr. Carter. "I saw it," she replied with excitement in her voice. "Zektar, can you try to move your legs?" Zektar concentrated hard and one of his legs moved a few inches. Then another leg moved. His compound eyes widened with surprise and hope. "I can feel them," he said through his translation device, his voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "I can feel my legs again. The sensation is returning." Over the next hour, Zektar gradually regained movement in all 6 of his limbs. The movements were weak at first, but they grew stronger as the nanobots completed more connections in his damaged spine. Dr. Carter ran additional scans to confirm what they were seeing. "The nerve pathways are functioning," she announced. "The nanobots have successfully bypassed the damaged sections of his spine. Nerve signals are traveling from his brain to his limbs again." Jake felt tears in his eyes as he watched Zektar slowly sit up on the surgical table. The alien moved his legs one by one, testing each movement carefully. After weeks of being unable to move anything below his neck, he was now able to control his body again. "This is impossible," Zektar said with wonder in his voice. "My people said that such injuries could never be healed. They said I would never move again." "Human medicine is different from what your people know," Dr. Carter explained. "We never accept that something is impossible if there might be another way." Zektar looked at both Jake and Dr. Carter with his large compound eyes. "You have given me my life back," he said. "How can I ever repay such a gift?" "You do not need to repay anything," Jake replied. Helping each other is what people should do. That is how we make the galaxy a better place for everyone.